So I'm Trent Morrow with L&B Counseling. I'm the owner of L&B Counseling. We are doing, this is our 18th Behind the Door series. And so you've seen Men, you've seen Kevin, and you see me, or excuse me, Sade. Men will be doing next week on October the 1st at 11 o'clock. We're always going to do this at 11 on Thursdays, and then Michael's going to present the week after that, so that would be the 8th. Today we're going to talk about screens and sleep. I know we've talked about sleep before in some of our Behind the Door, and it is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing that you can do for yourself and for your kiddos on a daily basis to make sure they get the right amount of sleep. I think to just understand what the right amount of sleep is, it's just good to have numbers. You want to think of sleep as kind of like IQ. Most of us on an IQ kind of fit in somewhere between 95 and 105, 110 on that IQ bubble. So most of it's in the middle. And then you got your tails, and sleep's the same way. So there are some people out there that can get by with 6 hours of sleep. There's not many. And then there's some people that need more. There's some people that need more than the recommended daily amount. So they might need 10 to 12. And there's not many of those either. Most of us kind of fit into the numbers that I'm going to share with you. So um, I know most of our audience is either adults or school-aged kids, whether that's elementary, middle, or even high school. So the numbers to bear in mind for your elementary school-age kids, they need somewhere between 9 to 11 hours on a daily basis. And then for your teenagers, they're kind of like us. They need somewhere between 8 to 10. Usually more, especially when they're going through those growth spurts, more closer to 10. Adults need somewhere around 8 on average. Always talk about that sleep bucket and that free time bucket and that work bucket. So you may have to adjust that bucket, that sleep bucket, a little bit for your elementary school age kids and for your teenagers. And when you get to sleep is also very important, like we've talked about before in some of our other Behind the Door series. I won't belabor that, but you just don't want to be up between the hours of 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. if at all possible. And if you are, you certainly don't want to get exposed to overhead light, artificial light, those kind of things. That will just have an impact on your day and the next day if you do get up and you're exposing yourself to light. Um, so something that I just want to give you, because since we're talking about screens, is some pretty cool research out there that says that for every hour that an infant and a toddler is on a screen, not the TV, but like like a computer, a tablet, or a phone, that they are going to get 15.6 minutes less of sleep for every hour. And then for teenagers or older kids, it's 26.4. So for every hour. And I know some of our teenagers and kids are on screens quite a bit. And this is like tablet interactive media. It's not necessarily, I know, what we're doing right now with school and that kind of format. But this is more the scrolling, the video games, the social media, those kind of formats that they're using. So bear in mind with those numbers, that's what that is attributing to, not the online learning school part. But so we know that, after 21, 22, 23 minutes less of sleep a night, that you already start experiencing cognitive decline. So if you got your teenagers that are on screens much longer than that, there's going to be an impact, which we'll talk about in a minute what that is. Also, just kind of a fact, in the US, 3/4 of children report that they have a screen in their room. And when I say screen, I mean a tablet, a phone, a computer, not necessarily a TV. And we'll talk about that in a second, why that's important. But so 3/4 of our kids have those phones, those tablets next to them. We've talked before about why that may be impactful. If the phone is turned up and they're getting notifications or it lights up or whatever, light is emitted through the eyelids. And so your sleep is disrupted at that point if there is some artificial light. That is because your eyes are an extension of your brain, and so the brain is cueing to light and making sure that there's not a problem in that moment. It's doing it involuntarily, so that's why it's really important. If you have the screens in the room, I know a lot of kids use them for alarms and stuff like that, that they're set to make sure that there's do not disturb during certain hours, and that's really easy to do. But make sure those things are set, or you put it over across the way in their room so they also can't see the light when they're sleeping, those kind of things. So there's four impactors, things that impact our sleep when it comes to screens. One is the total screen time that you have, how much you're using it in the evening up into bedtime, how violent the media is. So we're talking about video games or things on that you may be watching or scrolling through on your social media, and then bright light. So the younger the child is, so you think of our elementary school kids in particular, the reason why bright light, blue light, is so impactful is that their pupil diameter is twice as large as ours as an adult, and may explain some of why sometimes our eyes are deteriorating over time and hard time seeing things and things like that, needing glasses. But so kids are absorbing a lot more light, twice as much light as we are as adults. And so the brain is, its job is to kind of filter all that stuff and figure it out. And so if you're doing bright light, artificial light, overhead light, those kind of things into the evening, that's also one of the impactors that is going to disrupt your sleep. Um, so generally, what happens if you're getting impacted by total screen time, watching, or playing the violent games, observing those kind of things, um, or exposing yourself to a lot of light, or you're spending too much time on those devices up until bedtime, is you have a better chance of having delayed sleep, shorter sleep time. Sleep quality is disrupted, so you're not getting through your rhythms like you need to. You have longer sleep onset, so it takes you longer to fall asleep. On average, it can take up to 20 some minutes to fall asleep. Like that's kind of normal. But so this is taking longer. And then excuse me, excessive daytime sleepiness. I know we see a lot of that in our teenagers, that they just feel tired, or maybe even your kiddos are feeling tired, or yourself are feeling tired. The reason for all that stuff, the reason that all that stuff is happening for the most part is it's delaying the onset of melatonin being secreted. So melatonin is just the hormone that gets secreted from the brain as the light is dropping, which is the sun, that says, it's getting dark, it's starting to get time to rest and rest our brain, rest our body, and so it turns on like a faucet. And so it starts off at a drip, and then at some point it just needs to be fully on. Well, all these things are giving the brain, the eyes, conflicting information, and so the melatonin doesn't quite turn on as much as it should or stay on long as it should, and so maybe you fall asleep, but you wake back up, or maybe you have a hard time falling asleep, or you have that restlessness that we were just talking about. All that's because you didn't get as much melatonin as you need. I mean, think of it like a cup. You need the cup to be full, and pour out over time. And if it doesn't, if the light's coming in and disrupting the cup from being able to pour out the melatonin, that creates a problem. And we know that if you had a bad night's sleep last night, you're more likely to have a bad night's sleep tonight. So those things can kind of build on each other. So that's what's happening, kind of from a neurochemical body brain perspective. Of you're just not getting melatonin because of all these things that we're exposing ourselves to, and so it's causing all these different problems. So some of the causes for that is there is some research on blue light. Some of it is inconclusive, and they haven't done enough of it, especially on long-term research. It's been more short-term research that has shown that blue light can mess with your eyes, and it can even possibly deteriorate some of the nerve cells. But it's shorter wavelengths, and that's why it is hurting your eyes and potentially making it starting to suppress your melatonin for those reasons. Another cause, especially for like the social media and the video games, as you get into the evening and that kind of stuff, it's called a variable reward system. So it's kind of like a slot machine in that you go and pull it, and hopefully over time, most places that have these slot machines figure out over time, every now and then they have to pay out. And sometimes they have to pay out big time. It gives you the idea and the hope that you can, get a reward. Now with social media and the video games, we're not going to get too far into that, but what happens is they've figured out how to tap into your kind of animalistic primal needs and give you that variable reward, but it requires a little bit of frustration and cognition learning, and so you're more inclined to participate in it because you feel like you have a better chance than just pulling a slot machine. So you believe that over time, maybe you get a little reward, and you're learning, get a little reward, that if you keep doing that, that the reward will be greater and it will become more frequent. And so whether that's getting a like from a picture or a post or something like that, or playing well in a video game, if you're doing that, you're ramping your brain up, especially in the evening, rather than starting to cool it down, which would allow that melatonin to come on. And then we also know that kids that are participating, especially on the video game side, more of these multiplayer, think of Fortnite as an example, or Minecraft, any of the good games now, Apex Predator, the more players you have, the more ramped up you get, the more adrenaline you get, the more investment that you get, and the more interaction that you're getting. So all that in the evening has some consequences on the brain because the brain can't settle and do what it's supposed to do, which is give it melatonin because it's being ramped up. So the eyes are seeing all this stuff and the brain's inputting all this stuff and saying, this is cool, we're getting rewards, maybe getting some social praise, those kind of things, the things that, are important to us, the oxytocin and the dopamine. Um, and so it kind of hijacks the brain's ability to say, all right, let's shut this down, let's get rest. Or maybe you put a post out there, or maybe you need a streak going, or you're on red with a particular person, and those things start building and building, and the tension builds, and you're paying attention to it and needing it rather than allowing the brain to chill out. So that's why it's important to just pull away from that and those things as the evening progresses. All right. Um, so the consequences of bad sleep. We've talked about how we got there, what's causing it. Some of the consequences are we know that you're more likely to have a day of, let's just say, I won't say depression, but more of a depressed mood, more of an irritable state. You're more likely to have stress that turns into anxiety. Um, so there's a lot of psychopathology that comes from sleep, a whole lot, and there's a lot of things that health-wise come from sleep problems. You're also more likely to experience weight gain for something that's called neuroendocrine changes. Basically, it just means that the fat cells get bolstered when we don't get enough sleep. Um, you're more likely to be less physically active, which creates part of the weight gain problem and obesity. You're going to have cognitive decline, so your thinking and reasoning skills are going to be diminished the longer you go without sleep. Um, Adolescents, we know um, they're more likely to take risk if those parameters of, hey, you need to go to bed and you need to get off the game are not enforced, because they're going to delay that opportunity of going to bed for the reward of playing the game or doing well or connecting with their friends. So it makes them more likely to risk take. And on a kind of a more of a macro level, it just leads to other risky behaviors over time. Um, so the things to consider when you need to unplug, or you need to get your kiddos to unplug, or your teenagers to unplug, we always want to give you tools, is to no screens an hour before bed of any sort. TV's okay as long as the show is not violent or adrenaline inducing. You know, they've done some longitude studies on TV, and if you're just watching a show or something benign, it doesn't have real impacts on your melatonin unless it fits into that category of it's violent, scary, or overly stimulating. So when I'm saying screens, no tablets, computers, no video games, that kind of stuff, no phones. So an hour before bed. During the day, you need to take breaks. We've talked about this a lot in different Behind the Door series. You got to take breaks. You got to look outside. You need to get outside. You obviously always want you to get outside in the morning, especially when the sun's up, or even on a cloudy day like today. Get out there so it resets that internal alarm clock in 12 to 14 hours from when you're getting exposure to it. And that signals the melatonin to come on and gives you a less chance of getting bad cortisol bumps. So take breaks throughout the day. If you're having to be on screens, a general rule, if you can do it, is a 20-20-20 rule, which is for every 20 minutes, you need to take 20 seconds off and stare 20 feet away. Going back to that, take a panoramic view, look out, don't look at anything in particular, but just look out and do that every 20 minutes for 20 seconds, looking 20 feet away. If you can't, take a longer break in between your breaks and in between your kids' classes. I would encourage you to do it together. Be a good role model. So you have to, especially for your younger kids, you're going to teach them what to do and how to do it. You have to delay screens with infants and toddlers. And so the longer you can delay, the less impact that's going to have on them as far as getting wired and getting used to those platforms and wanting them and needing them to feel soothed. If you have to do something, you never want to do anything with an infant, 0 to 18 months. But if you have to do something with a toddler, then and something benign like Sesame Street, are good for you, are good for the brain if you have to do something. Um, you want to make sure that you have good lighting. It's better. We've talked about this before. It's better to have lighting down here because the parts of your eyes that are sensitive to light are in the bottom half. Overhead light is not good for you, especially in the evening. So cut all those things out. Turn on lamps and things like that that are more eye level. No big exposures to bright light. Limit the exposures. Um, we talked about this before, but some kids I think are using blue blockers. My kids are using blue blockers. There's some evidence that they work, and some of it's inconclusive. So it may be more placebo. They've got to do more studies on that kind of stuff. And get outside, stick to a schedule. Make sure you take your breaks like we talked about with your schedule. But do those things on a daily basis. Have the discipline to do it so you can give your brain the best opportunity to do what it's supposed to do naturally. You're just leveraging the brain and what it's supposed to do naturally by not giving it all this disruptive information, light, and video games and social media and all this stuff prior to bed. So really important to stick to that stuff. Um, Let me know. I'll give it like 30 seconds or so, see if anybody's got any questions. If not, we'll just wrap up for today. Like I said before, Men is going to present next week, and then Michael Bornstein will be here the following week, so the 9th. So please join us, at 11 o'clock on Thursdays for that would be number 19 and number 20. Like always, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate your questions and your interest. And if you have anything that you want us to talk about or want more information on, we'd be glad to look into it if it's something that kind of fits in our skill set um, and make it part of this series. All right. Hope you all have a great day and stay well and stay healthy.